see, we've got some incredibly talented artists this month for an exhibition entitled Community, and we really asked all kinds of artists to come in and tell us what they thought of community and what community meant to them, what it meant to build community. The piece we have in the other room, the photojournalist essay from Ray Rodriguez, explains a little bit what it's like to lose community. One of the things we do here at Cal, we work with a lot of different community groups to engage and help them find a safe place to explore community. And as you can see behind me, there are some, can I touch it? Is it okay? There are some really unbelievably beautiful pieces here from an incredibly talented artist named Ken Matsumoto. And I've been bugging Ken to show here for quite some time. And I'm very happy that he finally said yes. And I'd like to bring up Ken Matsumoto to talk a little bit about his process and about what community means to him. So first of all, Ken, welcome to PAL. It's your first time exhibiting here. I hope we see lots more of you.
This is very cool. I appreciate your community and my stuff being exposed to your community. It's a great opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Good. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit. Do any of you know what an usu is? I bet Ken will be able to tell you all about that. Can you explain to me a little bit about what an usu is?
Well, an usu is a vessel that Japanese break out during the holiday seasons, usually around New Year's. And what they do is they steam rice. What they do, listen to this, I should say. What we do is you steam rice to a special kind of rice, a very sweet rice, and very short grain. You steam it to a certain point, and then you take like 5 pounds of it, and you dump it into the usu, and then you take these long sticks, and you kind of mash it and jab it into this glutinous mass. And once you got it into a certain consistency, you wet your hands and you sort of turn it around, and then you break out these wooden mallets called kine. Okay? And the kine is what you pound it with. So there's usually 2 people pounding and 1 person churning this blob of glutinous rice. And you keep pounding it until you can feel no individual grains of rice anymore. And at that point you take it out. And then it's mochi, and you've probably heard of mochi is, right? Most Americans or most people know it as a coating around ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's.
Did you bring samples?
You know, I was thinking about it.
I wonder if you could talk to us, because these pieces obviously are very large and somewhat unwieldy, and I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about your process, from how do you get this beautiful, gorgeous compound curve from a block of solid material?
Well, basically what I have is a vertical lathe. It's a setup where I have a turntable on which I set the stone. And then next to that I have positioned 2 linear motion assemblies. The linear motion assembly is something that has machinery on it that slides back and forth on rails. Okay? And then one system is set up on another system. Okay, so this is that's what you call linear motion assembly. And on the end of the horizontal one, I have an angle grinder on which has a diamond blade. And so what I do is I'll stick a stone on the turntable, and at first I'll start making incremental cuts, churning the table slightly, making some more cuts, and then I'll blast all that off with an air hammer until I get it to a point where I can just draw the blade into it and essentially machine it down. It's like ceramics in a way, pottery, right? Yeah, so that's kind of how I do it.
Okay. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about these other 2 pieces, because they're obviously very different from something like this, and what they are, and where the bricks came from, and the history behind them.
Yeah, these pieces have the most to do with, I think, what the subject of this show is, community. In my neighborhood, I'm right in the middle of Japantown in San Jose, and 5th and Jackson. And I've been there for 20 years. Well, let me just back up a little bit. The bricks are used, they came from a house that used to be Dr. Ishikawa's home, okay? And that's like 3 doors down from my studio.
Can you explain the history of the
Yeah.
Dr. Ishikawa?
Yeah. And this house was donated to the Japanese American Museum. And they used it as the museum for about 3 or 4 years until they acquired the money to build a more appropriate structure for the museum. And when they tore the house down, it was one of those ranch-style houses that had brick up halfway to the wall and then stucco the rest of the way. So when they tore it down, I knew the curator there very well, and I asked him if I could have some bricks, and that's what these are. And right about that time is when I began to sense the real sense of community that, I mean, I never felt this before, and I finally understood it when this sort of happened, you know. Dr. Ishikawa's house, the bricks, and the way that my studio turned kind of this color everywhere. I mean, it's a very dusty process, although I do use water to cool the blade and keep some of the dust down. It still gets very good.
In case people don't know who Dr. Ishikawa was, do you want to explain a little bit about the history?
Well,
Why it was significant?
I know very little about him. I know that his daughter saw my works at the Triton Museum down in Santa Clara, and when she saw the title of these works, she called me up and she said, you know, this is Susie Ishikawa, I'm Dr. Ishikawa's daughter, I gotta come down and talk. Because when they tore her family home down, it was kind of traumatic for her. And she was so glad to see that these came of it, right? I mean, the museum's one thing, but something more personal, I guess. You know? And she actually bought one. So it's pretty cool.
Do any of you have any questions for Ken, either on themes of community or on his process, or you know, just what it means to have these living sort of historical objects, which are, I'm very tactile, like a 5-year-old kid, I want to touch everything, and thank goodness Ken's okay with that.
Oh,
But I just find them so austere and unbelievably elegant, and yet they certainly have a story to tell. Do any of you have any questions? Okay. Yes?
I was curious about the shapes. What drives the shapes?
That's a good question. One of the things about the shapes, about the forms, I find, is that no matter what culture you're from, what socioeconomic, you know, you're from, you recognize the function. So that's, to me, that sets up like this very basic communication, right? So it's sort of a visual language that everybody kind of understands. You know, people call them bird baths or whatever, you know, and that's fine. That's totally okay.
Lucky bird.
Yeah. No, well, my studio, I have a courtyard at my studio, and I have quite a few pieces sitting out there. And whenever it rains, it's like, you know, the birds come in. It's really kind of cool. But otherwise, the form is, it's in a sculptural sense. To me, it is. God, what is it? Let me start here. This piece, the way it says, it has a certain weight to it. Well, both of these, right? What I've done, though, is I've tried to lift it off the surface by putting this on it. These actually have a function in that when it's sitting down on something, you can actually get a handle on it. You know, it's not, if it wasn't for this, it'd be flat on the surface, and you have a hard time getting it up. Same situation with this. And this is more of an illustration of what I'm talking about, right? So one of the things about sculpture is, for me, is to lighten it, to make the mass appear less heavy, right? And in this case, I call this a floating usu because it kind of disappears. It appears for me to hover, and that's kind of what I was after. It's just to have it sort of float up. And in this case, in these forms, because of the small base and the sort of upward size, it has that same sort of thing. It sort of lightens the sense of it, I think. I don't know, maybe it doesn't work for you guys, but for me. Also, it's a simple form, and that's something else I'm really interested in. Yeah.
Any other questions for Ken?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So these brick parts, were they part of the stair?
Well, they were part of the facade of the house.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like stucco up here, down below, it's all brick.
That was a little. And were you expecting the patterns to come out of that? Because it's kind of unusual.
That's a good question. I did, when I started, I had to come up with a pattern first, right? Because if you just lay bricks on top of each other, each one of those seams are going to be a weak spot, right? So what I had to do is I had to design it in such a way that I have these going down and basically becoming key to the next level, okay? So that way it ties everything together and it makes it all integrated. What I didn't realize that when you cut a curve, that you get a curve, right? So you have these nice little things going on, you know, and that's one of those things. Just hey, look at that. That's what happened. You know? Who knew? Yeah. So, Tim, I'm sorry.
I love the pattern, and I was going to ask the same question, was did you take the individual bricks and reassemble them and then
Yeah.
build the form and then cut it?
Right. What I do is I took 5/8 inch thick particle board and made little bricks in order to find out what the pattern is going to be, and then I went ahead and on my turntable I just took the bricks and the mortar, put them all together. So there's no armature inside or anything. It's just bricks.
Great. Any other questions?
How long did it take you
It really isn't that long. You need to let it set up for a couple days after you do it. The tricky part is I start out by turning this upside down. In other words, this was like sitting on the turntable, and I'd do the outside first. Then I'd flip it over, and then I'd do the inside here, and then finish this off. Yeah, probably 3 or 4 days at the most. Yeah, depends on what time I get there in the morning and how long I last.
Any other questions for Ken?
Well, Ken, thank you
Oh
very
yeah,
much
thanks
for
again for having me.